Thank you. I would like us to take a minute to kind of revise or summarize what we've been talking about in the past 40 minutes, more or less. We've made the argument that civilization starts where communication is possible, then coordination, and then a step forward, cultural encoding. No, pardon that. We've not made the argument. We are using an argument that has been well researched and is well documented by historians and many more scientific. So I take that back. So we are using that argument that civilization starts the moment where communication, coordination, and cultural encoding function together. And for us to really kind of understand what that means, I would like to take the following two examples based on Germany. When we talk about the Germans, it is important to pause and to ask what we actually mean by that, because geography alone does not create Germans. A piece of land called Germany is, in itself, nothing more than rivers, mountains, roads, or cities. Physical space exists, but it does not speak, it does not remember, it does not categorize. Geography has no voice and no capacity to name the people who inhabit it, which raises a simple but revealing question. Why aren't people simply called those living between the Rhine and Oder? Rhine and Oder is a very popular river here in Germany. Or why aren't people simply called residents of Central Europe? The answer is that physical space cannot name itself. The category Germans does not emerge from land. It emerges at a symbolic level. What makes the Germans possible in the first place is the shared language. Regardless of whether people live in the north of Germany, in places like Hamburg, Kiel, or Flensburg, or those living in the south of Germany, in places like Munich or Stuttgart, which are based in Bavaria or Baden-Württemberg, or in places like Saxony, in cities like Dresden, they understand one another when they speak. This mutual language is not accidental. It is the first civilizational capacity, communication. So, communication is the synchronization of meaning across different minds. People, because people understand the same words, the same grammar, and the same basic references, they can exchange ideas. They can agree or disagree. They can pass knowledge beyond family units, beyond villages and cities, beyond local spaces. Without this shared linguistic layer, the Germans could not exist as a collective category. There would only be like scattered, unrelated groups occupying the same geographic land. But communication alone is not enough for a civilization to come alive. Once communication is possible, a second capacity emerges, which is coordination. Because people understand each other, they can now act together. They can decide who should govern the country, for example, by vote. They can define, debate, and review laws. They can organize education systems. They can plan collective activities, for example, very popular in Germany, football leagues, national anthems, the clubs, the associations. They can maintain institutions and manage public life over time, which is very important. Coordination transforms individual into a functional collective. At this point, the Germans are no longer merely people who speak the same language. They are people who can act together across distance and duration. This is where society becomes scalable, where cooperation exceeds face to face relationships and persists beyond immediate presence. Then, when coordination is possible, comes the third capacity, which is cultural encoding. Cultural encoding is the ability to store, preserve and retrieve meaning across generations. In 2026, people are still able to understand what it means to be German because memory has been externalized into records, text, institution, and education. The German history is well documented and readable. Literature, for example, preserves linguistic structure and worldview. School and university would transmit shared references. For example, we can all read about Johannes Wolfgang von Goethe, whose writing deeply influenced the German language. We can read about Gotthold Ephraim Lessing or about Immanuel Kant and trace intellectual tradition that shaped how reason, morality, and freedom were understood. We can access documentation of industrial development, such as the mechanization of writing and printing and publishing in places like or in cities like Leipzig by Johannes Gutenberg. At the same time, we share modern references of the German. For example, the national football team's victory in the World Cup 2014 in Brazil, or industrial and automotive symbols such as Mercedes or Bayerische Motorenwerke or Porsche and many more, which here serve as cultural identity that is internationally recognizable. All of these create a symbolic continuity. People separated by centuries still recognize themselves as part of the same collective. And importantly, this collective identity is legible not only internally but also internationally in other countries. When people refer to the German, we all know what it means linguistically, historically, culturally, and symbolically. When we put all of this together, the logic becomes clear. Language enables communication. Communication enables coordination. Coordination combined with documentation enable cultural memory or encoding, and cultural memory stabilizes collective identity. That is why people living in this geographical space can meaningfully be called the Germans, not because of land, not because of biology, but because communication functions as a civilizational infrastructure, transforming space into identity and population into people, the people of Germany. That is the first example. Now, let us move to the second example.
We don't trade the real for grace that erases what took place. We say it whole, we let it land. No safety net, no shifting sand. If it's true, it earns a tone. If it matters, we let it grow. Is not too much. Naming things is how we trust. What we hide can't hold its ground. What is